Hi, I'm Kindwin, also known as Feed the Writer, and this is the Get to Know My Taste tag as started by Sam and Marines. This channel is still very new. I am so far only using it to keep a record of the books I'm reading as I read them, so I haven't really had a chance yet to establish my reading tastes as a whole. So this tag has come at an excellent time. So thank you to Marines and Sam, both mutuals from my TikTok days and both just absolutely wonderful people with wonderful taste, for putting it together. So let's jump in with question one. How do I rate books? I haven't been really for years. I don't find star ratings particularly helpful for me as a form of reader tracker thing. I find the number system quite arbitrary, and I so rarely look back at a rating I've given to a book and agree with whatever number I've assigned it. That said, I feel like I might have to start assigning numbers for the purpose of reviewing, just to give you a better summary of how I feel about a book after I've said all I have to say about it, because sometimes I feel like I can sound like I like a book more than possibly I did. More than once I've had someone tell me that they've picked up a book based on my rave review of it when I remember liking the book but not raving. But I can see how I give that impression because I don't finish books that I think are shit. So nearly every book that I finish and review, I baseline liked. And often I'll find myself giving like a really positive sounding review to something that has tried to be new or different or interesting, even if I don't think it's fully succeeded, because I always want to reward a big swing. So yeah, I think I will have to institute a star rating system just to let you know where I actually fall on my enjoyment versus my like appreciation. And I guess that scale would be like 5 stars, really loved it, 4 stars, really liked it, 3 stars, positive, 2 stars, negative, 1 star, fuck that shit. With the knowledge that 1 and 2 stars are almost always going to be DNFs for me. I am very much of the opinion that life is too short for me to read books that I'm not getting anything out of. Question 2, how do I approach reviewing books? Chaotically. Book reviewing and talking about books on the internet is just a fun little hobby for me, so these reviews are fully unscripted. I don't really put too much thought into them until I turn on the camera, which is oversimplifying it a bit. Of course, there are thoughts about the book in my head at time of reading and afterwards, but I don't try putting them into any semblance of order or organization until I start recording, and then it's many takes until something makes sense. So I approach it very casually. I think I'm more emotions based than analytical, but I have also been an avid reader since I was very small. I think I have quite a high reading comprehension, and I've been working as a writer professionally for 15 years, and I have an MA in writing genre fiction. So I do think some of that creeps in, probably, but very little of it is on purpose. Question 3, what is the book that made me a reader? It was The Hobbit. Question 4, do I have a genre niche? I think all of my favorite books very much fall under the big 4 genre categories: sci-fi, fantasy, historical fiction, and horror. I have started reading more contemporary fiction of late, largely lit fic. I'm still not really big on commercial fiction, but my heart really belongs to basically anywhere that isn't the current moment. And yet I love books that do speak to the current moment, just through different avenues. Like, I really enjoy that degree of separation. Do I have one true genre that I love, though? I don't know if I could pick one. I think historical fiction and historical fantasy, when done really well, probably has the tightest grip on my heart. But if you tried to give me one genre to read for the rest of my life, I would not thrive in that environment. Question 5, do I generally prefer character-driven or plot-driven stories? Well, that is a difficult question because technically every book is both, and character, plot, and story are a triangle. You need all 3. But I also have a wider sort of definition of what a plot is than other people seem to, because I will be told that a book has no plot and then I'll read it and I will identify a plot. I guess you could phrase it as, do I prefer a character that drives the plot or a plot that drives the character? But even then, like, I don't care. Both can be great. I think there are so many plots that can sweep up a character and let them flourish. In conclusion, this is a question to which I don't have an answer. I think both are vital to a story, and I don't think they are as easily separated as everyone wants to believe they are. Question 6. What is a book I love so much that I don't care if other people don't like it? I can love it enough for all of us. I have a few books that fall into this category. First up, the Songs of Penelope trilogy by Claire North. This is a loose retelling of the Odyssey from the perspective of 3 Greek goddesses and centered around the island of Ithaca. The Locked Tomb series by Tamsin Muir, which is a science fantasy series that I cannot even begin to understand how I would summarize. The Warm Hands of Ghosts by Catherine Arden. This is the story of 2 siblings searching for each other on the Western Front in World War I. And Cara Dwindovi's Only the Astronauts, which is a speculative science fiction short story collection written from the perspective of various pieces of space garbage. Aside from the fact that I love all of these books with a passion enough to power a small sun, they're all niche enough that if someone told me that they didn't like them, my first response wouldn't be, well, what the fuck is wrong with you? Only the Astronauts and The Locked Tomb have a very specific tone and sense of humor to them, and a lot of people are turned off by stories set in World War I or II, and everybody's sick to fuck of Greek mythology retellings. Me included, by the way. So if you disliked any of the books I just held up, that is okay. I will not respect you any less as a person. I may even still take book recommendations from you. However, that will not be the case for these next books. What is a book I love so much that if someone doesn't like it, I know our reading tastes don't align? I actually have a lot of these in theory, but I have narrowed it down to the 5 books that I have actually seen people that I have respected talk shit on them, and then respected less as a result. Maybe respected isn't the right word. Trusted less. Like, it's just a core divergence in taste. If you don't think that Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen is baseline an excellent book, I do not understand what we would ever say to each other. If you think that The Reformatory by Tananarive Due is too long, too boring, or doesn't have enough horror in it, then I literally never want to hear your thoughts on historical fictional horror. This is a historical horror that follows 2 young siblings in Jim Crow, Florida. After a contentious encounter in which the brother stands up for his sister to a skeezy white boy, he is sent to a boys' reformatory school where there are far worse things lurking in the shadows than ghosts. Although there are those there too. Yeah, it is long, but not a single word is wasted. It's so fucking good, it deserved every award it got last year. Our Hideous Progeny by C.E. McGill is historical science fiction following the great niece of Dr. Victor Frankenstein. She is an amateur paleontologist mourning the loss of a stillborn baby. You may fill in the gaps as to what happens next. This book is very slow-paced and slow burn. It is very internal. It is that way on purpose. I have seen people call this book boring, and I have mentally crossed every single one of them off of a list of people I trust to tell me how well books are paced. Everything is very well motivated. There is definitely a plot, but I guess thinking back to that earlier question, this is something you would probably put under character driven. It's very much a single character story or a character piece. We are following one woman's arc, and it's great. Chain Gang All-Stars by Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah is a book that I have unfollowed people over. This is near-future speculative science fiction, and it presents a scenario in which the American prison system has gone fully for profit, and death row inmates are allowed an option to fight to the death gladiatorial style for a chance at eventual freedom. Naturally, those gladiatorial battles have become the hottest new extreme televised sport in America. We follow a huge cast of characters, but the plot revolves around Loretta Thurmore, who is only a few matches away from that theoretical freedom. The book is written in quite a literary and experimental style. There are different narrative positions for different characters and different perspectives. The book is fictional, but it utilizes non-fiction in footnotes alongside fictional in world histories. It's incredibly ambitious and it pulls it off. It's beautifully written, it has so much to say, it makes such a good argument in favor of abolition while also recognizing the limitations of current abolitionist theory. It speaks so much to the possibility of redemption and the need for restorative justice. And every time I see someone say that they wished this book had gotten rid of all of the ancillary perspectives and just focused on Loretta Thurnwall and her relationship with one of her team members, I wanna fucking scream. I have seen former mutuals and former people I used to follow call it overhyped and like convoluted, and that is a position I just cannot respect. If you think any aspect of this book was unnecessary, then I just want to fight you. Like, not literally, but emotionally. Spiritually, I'm not gonna listen to you about any book opinion. Like, if you don't at least respect what this book was going for, then we're just not gonna get along in the book space. And finally, The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. This one isn't as dire. There are a lot of complaints I will accept about The Lord of the Rings, or at least there are a few, but if you are going to pull out the old line that The Lord of the Rings is just a book about people walking and singing and hearing trees described, then I cannot take you seriously. Also, I think it's really boring that you recycle jokes. The Lord of the Rings has so much to say about hope and community and healing, and about stepping up and fighting with everything you have in times of real fucking peril, and the impact that the smallest action from the smallest individual can have in the grand scheme of things. If you are ever feeling hopeless, read Lord of the Rings. Skip fucking Fellowship of the Ring if you absolutely have to. If you don't want to, that is fine. But yeah, The Lord of the Rings is going to be a significant taste divergence for us. Question 8. What is in my trash pocket? Alien tie-in novels, Vampire Hunter D, and some bad and trashy 80s and 90s horror. I don't think I actually have many guilty pleasures anymore. I think I just have really good taste. Question 9, do I have any deal breakers in books? Yeah, if there is a romantic subplot, or if it is a romance, which I don't read often, but I do sometimes, and the love interest is abusive or an asshole, and that is never addressed, and that is painted romantically, and they end up together, or it just even appears that they're gonna end up together, I'm fucking out. I am sick to shit of glorifying terrible men or romanticizing abusive behavior. And it isn't confined just to men. I mean, it's fucking rife, but it also happens in sapphic storylines, and I don't like that either. Like, I'm very interested in exploring abusive storylines when, like, that is the purpose. But if it is supposed to be a romance and this person is a fucking villain, like, what are we doing? No. Other than that, I don't have huge deal breakers other than, like, just, like, in horror, I'm really not interested in a lot of the splatterpunk stuff. I hate cruelty for cruelty's sake. But other than that, I just have a list of, like, grievances. Not deal breakers, but, like, if I see that they are going to be in your book, I'm gonna hesitate pretty significantly, or at least a little bit. Like, enemies to lovers is such a garbage trope that no one seems to know what to do with. Time travel, surprise time travel, for sure. Multiverses, books within books. That thing where you get to the end of the book and you find out that the book has been written by a character in the book, but it's literally that book. I have never read a book where that happened and I wasn't violently angry. Overly quirky characters. The word cozy is increasingly a red flag. Any specifically romantic trope thing along the lines of touch her and I'll kill you, which again just falls under the abusive romantic garbage. Sorry, I shouldn't say garbage. You do you, I will be elsewhere. What is a strong opinion I have about a book released in the last year? I think Gorse by Sam K. Horton is underrated and underloved. If we are going by my star rating, this would be like a 4-ish for me, I think. It is historical fantasy set in Cornwall in 1786. There is no romance. It is gorgeously atmospheric. It is steeped in Cornish folklore. It follows a sort of clash between the old ways and the news, i.e. sort of fairy lore and the church, as a spate of very grisly, suspicious murders break out in a small town. There is a sequel coming out this year and I am keen. Question 11, what do I look for in writing? First and foremost, my absolute baseline is competency. I am always very happy to allow for perspective, voice, style, culture. I do not want every book to be written to a certain formula, but if the book is not at a bare minimum well written, then I'm not interested in reading it. And when I say well written, I don't mean it has to be beautifully written. I mean, I want the author to functionally understand how a sentence works. I need the dialogue not to be clunky or overtly expositional. I need there to be a certain logic involved in the way the words flow onto each other. It sounds like it's not too much to ask, but I have gotten very lost in traditionally published paragraphs before. And there is just a lot of clunky or flat dialogue out there. A lot of people just do not understand how conversations work, and they definitely don't understand how to use them to direct a scene. So baseline, I want competent writing. And that's just word level. On top of that, I'm looking for a point of view and a sense of purpose. Which is not to say that I want like every book to preach at me about a social ill, but I love it when I can feel like an author has something to say and knows exactly how they're saying it. I like books with strong themes, but that don't tell me what the theme is. I love it when an author trusts themselves and trusts the reader and therefore doesn't over-explain or reiterate things over and over and over. I love books that require me to think. I love books where I can tell that the author really cares about the craft. Ultimately, I think I look at books as art rather than entertainment and make my decisions accordingly. Question 12. How do I decide what to read next? It is entirely vibes and mood. I have never been able to follow a set TBR. I can barely even stick to a theme. Readathons are not a thing I can do. The literal second I feel obligated to read a book, I lose all interest in reading it ever. Yeah, there is just never ever a plan. Question 13. Where do I get inspiration for my booktube content? I do not. I just talk about whatever I happen to be reading. Question 14. If I could make any book go viral right now, which would I choose? I have been told that I do not seize enough opportunities to sing out about my own work, so I'm gonna do that. I choose to make my books viral. The Misadventures of an Amateur Naturalist is a historical fantasy sapphic Beauty and the Beast retelling set in France in the 1860s. It's YA crossover, and comp titles would be Our Hideous Progeny, Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater, and Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. The Edge of the Woods is a YA fantasy that I describe as an anti-fairy fairy tale. This is very much my response to the creepy supernatural love interest. Comp titles would be The Year of the Witching and Extasia, but a little bit more hopeful and a little bit more commie. And Almost Midnight, which is a collection of 3 fairy tales retold in a classic style. It features my take on Cinderella, Hans my Hedgehog, and The Little Mermaid. It is also illustrated by my friend Ben. Look at that little guy. With this collection, I really wanted to play with the idea that each story should have a very strong old school moral. So if you read them and you think you know what it is, please report back and let me know. And finally, question 15, who are some booktubers with taste similar to mine? I am still very new to booktube, so I'm still sort of amassing my pool of very reliable recommenders. As far as my perfect, or as close to perfect as you can probably get, taste match goes on booktube, that would be Ella. You can find her at Ella Has thoughts. She's also quite new to YouTube, but she has already put up some fantastic video essays. And then there are people whose tastes differ to mine, but whose thoughts are always really interesting and whose recommendations I always sort of take on board. And they are Marines, Jamila, Emma Skies, and Emma Tobias. Starry Steph, I enjoy reads with Rachel so much. And when Nicole at Sweeney Says actually posts about books, you better believe that I am listening. So that is it. That is the tag. If you're still here, thank you so much for watching. Please let me know in the comments if our tastes line up. And if our tastes don't line up, thank you for sticking around this long anyway. Feel free to stay on and watch me talk about books you'll hate. Until next time, friends. It is going to be really embarrassing if you guys can hear that fly. Or my dog trying to eat that fly.